All right, welcome to JC Sports. This is the Red Alert podcast on JC Sports. So, look, we had some breaking news on a Monday night. We were hoping to hear word of Moritz Sider and Lucas Raymond getting signed. So, the first one to go and get signed is Lucas Raymond. It's going to be 8 years, $8 million, just $75,000 over $8 million. So, it's really just $8 million. But in the grand scheme of things, this is another heist by Stevie Y. Because if we're talking about what the potential is of Lucas Raymond, it's very simple. The sky is the limit for this kid. Obviously, we've seen going into the later parts of last year how good he could be, and when you look at his stats last year, I mean, StatMuse has a great stat line here, and they bring it to fruition. They say Lucas Raymond last season, 82 games, 31 goals, 72 points, back in Hockeytown for 8 more seasons. You know, the thing about Lucas Raymond is I don't think he's certainly reached his peak. From everybody that I talk to in terms of the hockey business, they always talk about Lucas Raymond and they talk about what his potential could be. Some say Nikita Kucherov, some say a Philip Forsberg, which would be the low end of it. There's a lot of things that Lucas Raymond can become. And later in last season, late in the year last season, we learned exactly what Lucas Raymond could potentially be. He started becoming more of that go-to player. And when you got a guy like Patrick Kane, a guy like DeBrincat, a guy like Lucas Raymond, that's a good start for your team. And then when you add in these guys that are going to be coming through from Grand Rapids, it's certainly well orchestrated. You know, Steve Yzerman really hit on this pick. And, a lot of people talk about Steve Yzerman. They talk about the drafts and they say, why aren't these prospects getting here, faster? But the reality of the situation is this: Lucas Raymond and Mo Sider were the best players of their draft. It could be argued whether Tim Stutzel or I'm forgetting the other guy, but there could be another guy. But Mo Sider was one of the best defensemen in his draft, easily, and that's come to fruition. Simon Edmondson looks pretty good, and we're gonna start to see some of these kids coming down the pike. It's not just like it's not like you could just throw them all on the ice and become NHL players. You wish that was the case, but it ultimately is a draft and develop type league. And when you don't get that number one overall pick, you're going to have to get lucky or you're going to have to scout good. And the one thing that could be said about the Detroit Red Wings and what they did with Lucas Raymond, Mo Sider, and Simon Edmondson is their scouting is on point. And if anything, if uh, 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 their new guy, um, Nygaard, if there's any indication, I mean, that's a guy that could be good too. So when you talk about this team in terms of where they're going in the future is bright for the Detroit Red Wings. When you talk about how they have been able to put together a team, not getting a number one overall pick, they haven't had a top three pick yet. They have developed some good talent, some good top tier talent on the roster, and it's only going to get better. Like people, a lot of times they go, "Oh, they're 5 years into the Iser plan," or whatever the case may be. I know that was some of the talking points on the sports radio in Detroit, but when you talk about hockey, it's the same kind of parallel as baseball. You don't get good quick. And unlike baseball, there's a salary cap to abide by, so you can't outspend your mistakes. And what Stevie Eisman has had to do is he's had to basically we're going to draft, we're going to develop, we're going to get incrementally better where it's not going to hamper us for the long term. And now that you're going to start to see these guys like Raymond and Sider get signed long term, it's going to make more sense in why he built his team the way he did. You know, everyone could talk about how fast or how slow the rebuild has gone, but the reality of the situation is that Eisman has put a good team together, and he's drafted really really well with Lucas Raymond and Mo Sider. You go through a lot of NHL GMs; they haven't drafted as good as Steve Eisman, with the unfortunate luck that he's had in the NHL draft. So when I look at Sider and I look at Raymond, two guys that are going to be signed long term, these are guys that can take you into the future if you're a Detroit Red Wings fan. And then you got Nate Danielson coming down the pike, and you got a Nygaard coming down the pike. Sebastian Costa, Trey Augustine coming down the pike. The future is bright for the Red Wings. I think a lot of people they want to put it, to let's get it faster, let's get it faster. And I'm sure Eisman would have loved to get it have it done faster, but it's just not the way that the chips may fall. And the reality of the situation is when you rebuild in hockey, you have to be either good at your job or get lucky. And if you see what Steve Eisman has drafted in his first 3 years with Edvinsson, Sider, Raymond, I think it's more good than lucky. So it gives you hope for the future. This is a great deal for the Detroit Red Wings in terms of how it's structured. $8 million is going to be a steal in a couple years. It really is. When the salary cap starts to rise in the NHL, it's going to be a lot better of a deal just by looking at some of the deals that are coming out in hockey lately. So it could be potentially. We talked about it a couple with me and Cindy. We talked about it a couple of times. The reason that the Boston Bruins were good for so long and they had so much they could always rebuild really quickly. Well, they never had a guy like Pastrnak or Marchand have this mammoth deal until now. Now Pasternak's making $11 million. So you're hoping that what Lucas Raymond does in the future makes this deal look like a total steal. Now, obviously the negative side to that is if, and this is a big if, but if it doesn't pan out towards like what happened with Pastrnak or Marchand when they signed deals early and they got them locked in to a really good number, and then as the salary cap went up, that those deals looked really, really good. If that doesn't happen, and that could be the issue with how things go, but with the way Lucas Raymond played last year, the way Mo Seider has been playing, there's no reason to think that this Red Wings team is not on the precipice of doing something special. You can't sit here and you can't say that Steve Eisman has done a bad job, because when you look at Lucas Raymond, you look at Mo Seider, you look at Simon Edvinsson, those are guys that are going to take you into the future. And the way I look at it is a steal, especially $8 million for the Detroit Red Wings. It's we were wondering what was happening with the negotiations with Raymond and Seider and Yzerman, because we know Yzerman he holds a hard bargain, man. Like we saw how hard it was for Dylan Larkin to get his money. We seen how hard it was for Lucas Raymond to get his money. I think it was more of the case that they were in Germany more than anything. But when you look at it in totality, Yzerman got down to a number that he likes, that he thinks is good for the future, just like he did with Larkin. And if it pans out the way that Steve Yzerman did this deal, you could be potentially talking about this deal setting the table for what is to come for great Detroit Red Wings hockey coming down the pike. Because when you get a guy locked in for 8 years, it's either going to be a great steal or a bad contract. I lean more that this is going to be a great steal for the Detroit Red Wings, especially when the salary cap rises. And it's going to be a good for the Detroit Red Wings and Steve Yzerman, especially when Seider signs his. So all in all, it's a great time for the Detroit Red Wings. It's a great time for the fan base, because obviously we were hoping that Lucas Raymond would resign with Detroit. We knew it was only a matter of days, matter of hours, but he signed here around 7 o'clock today on a Monday on September 16th. So it's a great time. Obviously, you wanted to get this done before training camp. You didn't want to have anything like Willie Nylander go into the season, and it would just be a total nightmare. You knew Eisenman wasn't going to do that, and so now they got it locked away. Now they got to get Seider done, which I imagine will come pretty soon. So stay tuned to JC Sports for more on Red Wings news coming down the pike. Obviously, we got a couple weeks to a training camp. So there's going to be a lot of things happening in between there. That's going to be the best part. And obviously with Lions, Tigers, Red Wings, we're going to have a full slate on JC Sports, especially with Michigan State. So stay tuned, subscribe below, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.